Hey, we're Saints. Good morning. Happy Friday and a blessed 2022 to all of you beautiful people. Father Chris here. Glad to have you in with us for our Crucifixional live stream. We've been talking about newness all week long because, well, it's the new year. And look, as a year starts new, we want to crush it. We want to kill it. We want to be different because we want to that's inherent in human beings, is to strive to grow and to get better. And though we may have been good in 2021 and maybe even in 2020 itself, we want 22 to be awesome, right? That's just how we always want to get better. And we recognize that to do that, this first day of the year is a marker, and then we can start from there, and I'm going to go for it, I'm going to be great. And that as we get into it, that very often data shows us that most New Year's resolutions are gone before February even hits. That means we won't even last a month. Most of that group are gone within the first 10 days of January. So we're struggling through making these changes real that we want in our lives. And we've been playing on two things all week. One was Albert Einstein, which I credited him for making a statement that I don't know that he made, but I love it. It's that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results, right? It makes sense. If you keep doing the same stuff over and over, and you want something different, it's not how it works. I use the image of the solitaire game that I play on my phone as a perfect example of that. If you do what you always done, you get what you always got. That's just how it works, right? So that's life. So how do we make these changes? Because we're fighting the biology of habit. We're fighting repetition. We're fighting the environment that's all, set up and designed to push us back into those habits that we've already established. It's a lot of hard work. And how do we fight that? How do we make an effective change for that newness that we seek, right? Well, the way that happens, we see very clearly from the great Apostle Paul himself in chapter 6 of Romans, which is the baptismal chapter. He says that as many of you as were baptized into Christ were baptized into his death, that as he was raised from the dead by the glory of the Father, you too might walk in the newness of life. And we talked about yesterday that Jesus was alive. He was a human being, right? The God-man who became God, the Son of God who became a human being in the flesh, was alive. And then he went to the cross and he died. And in the cross, in that moment, he crushed death. And then by the glory of the Father, 3 days later, he was raised from the dead in a new life, an unending life. So alive, to the cross, to death, to the empty tomb, and unending life. And he says the same, that you who are alive, because you're reading Paul's letter or you're hearing it, if you're baptized into him, that's when you get to share in the cross. You're on the same path. Jesus to cross to tomb, empty tomb, you to cross, hopefully to empty tomb, right? But you can't get there except through the cross. It's a new life. When we're baptized, we're put into the cross, and then we're pointed towards that empty tomb, that new life. So that when death does come, God will look at us and say, welcome my son, welcome my daughter, just as he did to Jesus Christ. Right? That's the plan. That's the path that we have to take. Difficult, right? We all know making those changes is often difficult. And we've been talking about this week, we talked about our diet, and we even kind of alluded to exercise. And, it can come, changing things in our lives, the way we look at the world, putting to death that old stuff in us. It covers all aspects of life, whether it's in our relationships with loved ones, with spouses, with children, the work environment, the work ethics that we have, hiring skills, being hired, interviewing, all that kind of stuff, our physical health, the mental health that we have, whether we're watching football games or playing in football games or whatever it may be. It's all hard work. Most importantly, and that's why I saved it for Friday, is our position with God, right? And where do we, as men and women, as warrior saints who are striving to make 2022 the best year of our lives, where do we align ourselves in relation to God? I know that's kind of cheesy to say it like that, but where do we put ourselves in relation to God? And most of the time, I know this is a hard one, and I struggle with it too, and I'm a priest, right? So I get it. But most of the time, God becomes often an afterthought, someone that we call upon when we need something or when we find ourselves in trouble. Someone who, it's Sunday, I'm going to go to church because that's what I'm supposed to worship. And, some people I know are more dedicated. I get it. But for the majority of us, it's a thing we do out of obligation when we need to do it. But where does that kind of thinking lead us? Where has it led us? It's led us into whoever we were in 2021 and before. if you want to go forward in 2022, you got to start thinking differently. And that means that we put God at the forefront of our minds. I'm going to tell you what I mean by that. As a great example, the story of the Old Testament. It's fabulous. It's unbelievable. Genesis, the creation, all those beautiful accounts with Adam, goes into Noah. We hear about Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and his sons Joseph, and so on. Then boom, it rolls into Exodus to Moses and all of those wanderings. And God is promising his people this beautiful land. Just don't worship other gods. And then you roll into Joshua, who takes the people into the promised land and he clears it out. There's no more people in there to tempt them. And the people have their land and they get a lot of their space. And Joshua says, just don't worship other gods. And the people are like, yay, God. And then Judges comes, the very next book, and they do what? They do wicked in the sight of the Lord and they worship other gods. And God allows them to be crushed. And in that being crushed, it says in Judges, they forgot the Lord and they were crushed by their adversaries, the Ammonites, the Amalekites, the Hittites, the Jebusites, the Canaanites, all the ites, right? They crushed and oppressed the people of God. And then they remembered God and called out, oh Lord, save us. And he would send a judge to save them, right? That story is not one that we look to with admiration. That story is a reminder for you and I that we cannot look to God only when we need help, but that we have to look to God first. Now, if the people of God, the Israelites, never abandoned him, would they have ended up exiled in Babylon? I don't know. That's not for me to say. I'm not God. But it is to say that we know for sure by virtue of the fact that they did abandon them, he brought his enemies upon them. So that stands to reason for you and I that if we're not always looking to do the will of God, we're going to find ourselves very much like we were in 2021 and 2020, right? Doesn't mean that if we do everything God says that in 22 it's going to be perfect, but a lot better. And so the message then is, what does it mean to put God first in the forefront of your mind? Does it mean that you need to be walking around all the time thinking God and singing, lovely tunes and saying, I love God and, Jesus is my friend and we're on the beach and we walk in footprints and then there was one, and that's not what it means. It means that everything you do, every action you take, every word you speak, every thought you make, I'll be watching you. Sorry, I couldn't help it. It was there. I didn't mean to but everything you do, every action, word, thought, it has to be with an eye on the cross. All right, that's the police, right? Come on, that was good stuff. It just happened. But you've got to keep your eye on the cross, baby. That's what it means to always have God in your mind. So that, like, when he looks at you, he's like, oh, that guy, he looks like Jesus. Because he's acting like Jesus. Not because your hair or your skin color or any of that kind of stuff. Nobody cares about that. It's because your life, your modus operandi, very much imitates Jesus Christ. That's what it means to have God at the forefront of your mind. And look, if you're like me in the past few years, that has not been your modus operandi. That's the change I want to make in my own life. In 22 to be great, I want to look like Jesus. I'm an ugly dude and I get it, but if God were to come down right now and look at me, I'd want him to say, oh, you look like my son. That's what I want. I don't care what I look like. I care that I look like him through my life, through a crucifixional life. That's what I want for you. So here it is. You want to make 22 the best ever? I'm with you. I'm trying alongside you. My arm is here. Let's go together, baby. But to do that, you've got to imitate the Lord. And that means the cross. It's time to get some. It's time to stop talking about what you want and to start doing the things that will bring you what you want. It's time to stop pretending that your 22 is going to be the best year ever, and time to make 22 the best year ever. It will not happen by itself. If you keep doing what you did, you're going to get what you got. I'm saying let's do it crucifixionally. Let's do it differently. Do it with us. We're in the same boat, in the same fight. You can join us. You do not have to do this alone. Join our movement by visiting warriorsaints.org and subscribe to the way of the warrior saint. I talk about it every day. It's what we've given our lives to. When you visit warriorsaints.org, 3 steps you'll see. The one I'm talking about today is the way of the warrior saint. It is the library, and we use that term because libraries are full of books that have teaching and wisdom to help us understand the world and to become better people. This library is filled with videos, and all of these videos, instructions, are wisdom and teaching and knowledge and instruction, and they're not from Father Chris but from God himself, and they help us live a crucifixional life which will help us make 22 the best ever. Join us, warriorsaints.org. We will be back next week to continue our live streams. Don't know what we're going to talk about yet, but it's going to be fun nonetheless. We will, however, this Sunday have Orthros and Divine Liturgy at 9 and 10 a.m. Mountain, respectively. Please join us. Love you, beautiful people. God bless you. As always, keep walking on the way of the Warrior Saint. Pray for us. We are praying for you. Join us at warriorsaints.org, and let's get on the way of the Warrior Saint.